Hello, everyone, and welcome to On the Move, a show where we share transportation sales and marketing success stories. I am Jennifer Karpus-Romain, Executive Director of TMSA, a trade nonprofit educating and connecting marketing and sales professionals inside transportation and logistics. Today on the show, I'm excited to have Will Jenkins, founder and CEO of Journey. We took a little summer break here at On the Move, first episode back in August. Welcome to the show, Will. How are you doing today?
I'm great. I appreciate you having me on. Thank you very much.
So excited to have you here. We've known each other for a few years, but excited to have you on your first TMSA podcast. And then we'll be talking a little bit about your first kind of speaking engagement with us too. But for our listeners who may not be familiar with you or your journey with Journey, please tell us about yourself and the company. What inspired you to build it?
Absolutely. So my name is Will Jenkins, CEO and founder of Journey. I've been in the brokerage and transportation space the past 12 years. I got my start at Coyote in 2014 on the carrier sales side of the business. I met a few great people there that I had the opportunity to build Molo with some partners, and we started that business in July of 2017. We scaled that business from zero to about 600 million in revenue in our first 4 years. I did a lot of different startup stuff during that time. It was as hectic gets, and I have really long hair. I wanted to pull it out at different times. It's just, there's so many things going on, but it taught me a lot about building a business and, how to successfully build a culture and get great people to want to work with us and, find a way to be useful for different shippers and carriers, things of that nature. But we ended up selling that business November of 21 to ArcBest. Stayed on about 18 months after that, still leading our sales team. And primarily, I wanted to see us hit $1 billion in revenue. We ended up doing 1.25 billion in 2022. And then I left May of 23, negotiated my exit, and had the opportunity to think about what I wanted to build. And I was fairly confident that it was going to be Journey. I didn't have the name, and I wasn't really sure all the services we were going to provide. But we started in November of 2023. So we're coming up on 3 years now. And we provide 3 services: recruiting, consulting, and training. We have a team of 8, and we work with about 180 different players in the space, which now includes 14 of the top 100 players. And I love it. Outside of that, I do a decent amount of angel investing and advising in the space, but having a blast.
And so, like you said, I had this career in the industry, wanted to stay here, knew I was going to do something else, wasn't sure what it was. Was there a moment in your career when you were like, nope, this is what Journey is going to be because the industry needs something different, or I need to provide something different?
So a lot of it was out of necessity, to be honest with you. I had a non-compete, and the last time I had to go and try to start something from scratch, we built a really cool company in Molo, and it worked out quite well. And none of us really knew what we were doing, but young and ambitious, ready to go do the work. And so I had to figure out a way to stay close to the industry, but not really be directly in brokerage. So due to the nature of my non-compete, I was able to start the recruiting side. And I'm very transparent. I had a good relationship with the ArcBest execs and said, look, I think I'm going to start a recruiting company. And then when my non-compete allows, I'm going to do some consulting and some training work. So a lot of it was necessity. I had to figure out how to make it work.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited, like I said, to have you on the show, and you are going to be speaking at our upcoming Marketing Accelerator. You are kicking off the Accelerator. So this is a 3-hour virtual session, and there's 3 different speakers. You are one of them. You'll come on. I'm pulling up the QR code now so people can learn more about it. But your session is about building a brand that drives trust, visibility, and revenue. And I love this topic because I feel so often when we talk about branding, people just are like, oh yeah, brand is great, nice to have, but it's really not just a nice to have. It's a business strategy. So I'm curious why you think that perception of a nice to have, it's not something that you need to have, is still existent today.
I think building a brand is uncomfortable because you typically have to go outside of your comfort zone to promote yourself or your business. And inherently that is not very comfortable for most people. It takes time to, find your voice, both as a corporation, so the brand and the voice of the organization, and then as an individual or an executive. So I think that's the first barrier. It's just not very comfortable to do. And, most people take the path of least resistance. So we'll put up a couple of posts, we'll go do the conference schedule and all that stuff, but you have to be really intentional about how you put your brand out there, again, both as an organization and individually, because that's the first impression of you. And you can shape it however you want positively if you take some focused effort to do it. So I'm incredibly passionate about it, but I think it's a little like, oh, I'm scared. Like people might, oh my, what do they think I'm dumb, or what if they don't
Mhm.
brand and whatnot? And that's okay. It's part of learning. So I think it's a little uncomfortable at first.
I think that makes a lot of sense. I also, one of the things that I always think about is like the brand is going to exist whether you're the one leading the conversation or not.
100%.
So, do you want to be in the driver's seat or that, or do you want somebody else to be? And so, even if it is uncomfortable, even if you don't want to do it, you still should because of that. Because if you're not leading that conversation, somebody else is going to be about you, and they're
Totally.
not going to say the things that you want to say.
No, I mean, you can control the narrative to an extent and shape these conversations and perceptions, in a more tangible manner. Or, as you mentioned, other people are going to talk about the business regardless. So I'd rather be in the driver's seat.
Me too. And you often talk about then like helping companies connect brand investments to measurable business outcomes, which I think is a big piece of this. When we built the marketing accelerator, all of these pieces are all about that like business outcome, that ROI. It's not just, oh, do this marketing initiative just because. So what are some of the biggest misconceptions you think that leaders have when they're trying to evaluate whether their brand is actually working?
The first is drawing a clear line of sight to revenue and production based on the investment that you make in branding. It can be a little bit opaque. We can do this podcast, right? And we may get inbound traffic as a result. Someone may go fill out a form on our website and may get a DM on LinkedIn. There could be some comments on different socials. And that could be what spurs the person to have the first conversation, to sit down, and maybe we get a contract 2 or 3 months from now, right? It's kind of hard to track. It's not like very, very clear. Now you can have sophisticated lead funnels that show where things come in, but those impressions that someone has of Jennifer in January and then April and July, they don't always really, really line up. So it's not easy to tell. So I think the first is, gosh, is the spend returning revenue and net new logos? I think it's a little bit opaque. So sometimes people go, I don't need to do it because I don't know if I spend X dollars that I'm going to get the return. The second is, people sometimes just don't know where to start, or how do I go about building this? So again, cost can be a barrier if you don't really know who's good, what's helpful, where do I spend my dollars? Those two things are typically a little bit challenging for people to get over.
Mhm. And I know you mentioned that sometimes some of these engagements can be hard to track ROI on, but do you have any techniques that people can use to track that ROI?
So there's a couple different ways to think about it. For some of the partners that we do really, really in-depth work with, if you've got a way to create specific landing pages based on messaging and drive lead capture and data capture, it's very important. It's also helpful during any types of conversations to have a good dialogue around, how did you hear about us first? Now, it's a little bit more fuzzy in terms of, the hard metric on, I clicked this on Jennifer's profile, I then went to her website, I filled out a contact us form. Like, that's the most direct form. Or I met Jennifer at TMSA at the conference. So like, it's when it happened, right? I know that, conference spend was worth it, but there is some credence to saying, hey, when did you hear about us, right? Was it a LinkedIn post? Did you see us on Instagram? And oftentimes in that first, discovery conversation, they'll say, oh, I saw a LinkedIn post. This happens for us all the time. I am always asking people in our first discovery call, what made you reach out, or how'd you get in this conversation? Typically, I saw a LinkedIn post, it was a podcast, it was, XYZ, or, we bumped into them at a conference, something of that sort.
Hmm. Absolutely. I always advise people, like when I was a director of marketing, anytime a new customer came in, I would ask, or have the salespeople ask, whatever, like, what is the first time you heard about us? Because I do think, like you were saying, oh yeah, you can have these funnels, your CRM, everything connected, but like, what is their first memory of you? Because that I think is so interesting, because most of the time it's not going to be the first time that they actually heard of you. And so then you can start doing that work of like, where in our workflow are we getting the most traction? And so I love that you said even in those discovery calls that you're asking that. So that way you're like, okay, like it's important when we close the deals, but it's also important when we're just talking to the people as well.
One of the things we think about often, because we don't do any paid media, and people typically look at me like I have 3 heads when I say that. We have not paid a dime for anything. No paid ads, no paid traffic, no paid placement, nothing. All organic. I would say 80 to 85% of the customers that we have, 180 of them, have been inbound. And it is all through very intentional development of the brand and helping just give information out about what we do, but not be overly salesy. I say that to say it's tough to track the impressions and what is the reason why someone converted. But I can tell you, just using our business as a use case, if you don't have those impressions, they will not convert. So you may be sitting there going, gosh, is it worth it to hire someone in marketing, or is it worth it to build our brand or bring someone in? Like, the answer is yes, because if you're not doing that, every piece of outreach is significantly more challenging because there's no track record or information on who you are. It just makes it way harder.
Mm-hmm. And I do think like we're talking to about like the company brand, but then your brand, and you represent Journey. And what I've always loved about your presence is that you really do go out there and you share ideas, lessons, observations. Like, you're not afraid to share your opinion and your thoughts on things, which is so important to personal branding. And I love at the beginning, you're like, sometimes people are afraid to do it because they don't want to sound stupid, which is a fear we all have, but you learn, you learn 100%. That way. And do you think that when you started doing that, was building your personal brand something that you were like intentionally doing, or as you were just sharing your own thoughts and being authentically you, that just evolved over time?
It was 100% intentional. So during COVID, and really during our time building Molo, we had a relatively prominent brand on LinkedIn, and it helped us go and recruit people. It helped us win relationships with shippers and just start to drive in the fact that we were a top performing brokerage in the space and someone that people should interact with. And I think I learned seeing that it was really, really important to be intentional about building your brand. And I don't know that I spent enough time doing it, but there were some early indicators that it was fruitful. And so I remember in this crazy story, I actually bought a program from this guy named Justin Welsh. He's very prominent, like a solopreneur on LinkedIn, and just talked about you can, talk to your ICP, like really be in front of them if you create useful, thought-provoking content. And it doesn't have to be salesy. It could be something. Me and Jennifer talked today about marketing. I'm gonna write something about what I learned, or the journey, pun intended, of the process to learn different things. And that has, for me, created a lot of really, really intentional inbound. And so once I realized, okay, I have to figure out, what I feel comfortable talking about: sales, perseverance. I know freight very well. I love to work out. Like, these are things I feel passionate about. I could talk about them cold, share that information, and just be yourself. Like, people really, really connect with that. And then a layer deeper to your question around authenticity, like, did it just happen with me finding my voice, or was it intentional? The authenticity part came as I realized people engaged more with me when I was more of myself. And I was like, wait, I feel like I just got permission to just be me. And that was probably the coolest learning over the last 4 years of building my personal brand. 100%.
I agree. Like, I remember when I started, I was a member of TMSA before I was executive director, and I was a director of marketing for a technology like CRM firm. And it was a very different role. And so taking this role, it became much more leadership, public. And I never did that before. Like, my job was getting my president to do interviews and so all of a sudden people were paying attention to me, and it was terrifying because I was like, I have nothing to say. Like, I don't know. But I realized the same thing when I just took a deep breath and I was myself. When I realized that everybody has a perception that matters, everybody has a skill set, experience, whatever. And yes, thinking, what am I comfortable talking about? What do I actually know? Then it just becomes a piece of you instead of you trying to figure out who you're going to be online.
100%.
And it was way better. Like, even in that, I feel like we can spend so much time pretending to be something that we're not. It's exhausting. It's exhausting anyways to just do it. So, like, might as well be yourself and do it that way. So I think that that's a very good lesson that I've also learned over the past 4 years.
I mean, you have so much to share, right? You have so many life experiences, personal and professional. And I think once you find out or realize, okay, wait, I do have some cool stories to share, and I don't have to stand on this soapbox and try to get everyone to think the way that I think. Let me just explain what I've learned and how that's been helpful. At least for me, I found that to be the easiest way to just really get rooted in my voice. And the other part is, when you meet people in person, you get to be the same. if you're
Yeah,
building this brand about who you actually are. Because sometimes I'll meet people and I'm like, man, that's like a very different person than like who so it just would never work for me because I
mhm,
am in person a lot. And I'm like, I just gotta be me. I just have to.
right. hmm Yeah, and it makes it easier too because then when you meet those people in person, they feel like they know you, and they're really you, and you're not starting from the bottom level. You already have some type of interaction, some type of engagement. Like yes, like people know that you like to work out, they know that you want to talk about sales and all that stuff. So those are things that they can relate to already. Where if you're just meeting them right off the gate, you have to do all that work instead of like getting into that.
100%.
And I think a big piece of that too is that the more you are yourself and the more you show what you also then build trust, which I think is hugely important. And that's something that you've spent your time coaching, sales, messaging, growth, all of that. So, across all of those conversations, what really separates companies that do earn trust consistently from the ones that are still struggling to stand out?
The first, I think, is cohesive brand messaging in general. It is easy to build trust with, in our industry, there are typically 3 or so buyers, just speaking brokerage, right? You have a shipper, you have a carrier, and then you have talent, people that you're recruiting, right? You're selling to those 3 parties at all times. If your brand messaging is consistent, so Jennifer sees how we post on LinkedIn, maybe it's a little aloof, it's kind of funny, there's some levity to it, but like that's just who we are. And then you meet us and that's who we are. You're like, oh, okay, that checks out. There's an element of trust there. And that same thing happens when that's the brand that you see. And then that's the copy that you read via email. That's the way we show up in person. That's the way our brand actually looks. Like some of it can be aloof and playful, but like the text and the font doesn't align with that. It's like very serious. You look at it, you're like, something's a little off here. So if it's consistent, that's like the first building block. And then how do you engage when you meet that person? It's like the second building block. And the third is, okay, we've won the opportunity. So did we do all of the stuff that we built this on? Any of those, you can topple them over. The whole thing doesn't work. But it
Mhm.
starts pre-engagement, then with actual conversation. Now the rubber meets the road. We're doing the work. And man, you may have built this relationship. I'm talking to Jennifer for 12, 14 months trying to close this deal, get it over the finish line. And now we don't actually do the stuff that she's seen forever. Like we lose the trust. So the best companies, they build all of those blocks.
I think that's so true. And I think the consistency is so important. And um, there's so many different departments that work in that. And you have to collaborate between them because if your marketing doesn't understand how your sales are pitching, if your operations doesn't understand what sales is promising, if all of that's out of whack, you're never going to get that consistent voice. So I love that advice because it's so important. And it can be simple. Like for TMSA's like social voice, I refuse to use stock images because I'm like, people look happier and more engaged at a TMSA conference than any stock image. So like, why are we going to make people look bored when we have the photos of people being happy and engaged at a conference? So like that's like when we work with our committees and like people are doing put like that's I will veto anything that has like a stock image. Like use the ones that we have. And it like people laughed and now for the most part every once in a while like one will sneak in, but I'll be like, no. But I feel like things like that are important. Like who are you? Who is the company? What do you want to represent? And then how do you build that? And I do think it's really important for marketers to, shadow salespeople and listen to how they sell, and that sales understands how operations and your customer team are actually talking to the customers so that you can create that alignment.
Your comment about stock images hits so hard for me because I'm the exact same way. We will not use any stock images. We bring professional videographers and photographers to all of the events that we host. We're
Mhm.
very intentional about capturing candidates and just you never know when you could use a good picture of people in a group and it's real. And so I'm going to go a little bit on a tangent here, but
Please
I'm
do.
I'm on LinkedIn engaging with people all the time, and you see a lot of very poor stock images or like AI generated photos, and that's the brand that you're building. That's how
Mhm.
people are engaging with you. That may be the first time they see you, and for us, will never be the case. We are very, very intentional about that. But I'm glad to hear that you draw the line on that, because I do think it changes the way people engage with what they see. And I can tell you, based on using our actual images, even versus graphics that we made. So we use a journey graphic, brand it properly, or we put, Daniel Soliday on there, our senior customer success manager. It's a candidate we took. Daniel's picture gets more engagement, and we get inbound leads as a result of it. Like, people want to see people. So that's incredibly important.
They do. Even at TMSA shows, I tell the photographer that I am not a bride. Please don't follow me around. Like, I don't need all of the, because that's what like the first time I started, because they're like, oh, she's the leader, so we're gonna take. I'm like, I don't need all the pictures of me. I want the pictures of the people. That's what I want. And the one photographer, she's like, everyone looks happy when they see you. That's what happened. I'm like, well, that's lovely feedback, but still, then put the camera on their face when they're smiling.
Right.
And she was like, but I love this feedback, because that is what happens, and you do see that a lot. And there's key people that you want, but like, I just feel like that's, for me, like, the membership of TMSA is who shines, and like, that's who we want to capture. And so I think that's really important when you're thinking about that brand voice and who are you going to show. Is it your staff members or your team members? Is it who they're going to be actually talking to? A lot of people do like to have the face to the voice to the person they're going to be working with. That's part of that building trust element, because they're like, this is a real person.
Totally. It makes a huge difference.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I do want to talk about, like, as we talk about building brand and why it's important, I feel like the industry has been through a really tough couple of years. And what I see is when times are tough, marketing just gets fully pushed aside. Budgets get cut. The poor marketing people have to do even more with less. And I feel like it should be kind of the opposite. Even if you can't make the financial investments, you should still then be working with your teams to think about how you are still going to market, how you are still branding, how you're protecting that brand voice and who you are, your proposition, your differentiator. What are your thoughts on that?
I agree wholeheartedly. And my analogy is, it's like running a race and showing up, and you don't warm up. You don't wear the equipment, right? It's a 400-meter dash, and instead of wearing track spikes, you've got on a pair of hiking boots, and you just show up, and you don't jog, stretch. They just get on the line, boom, and we start running, right? Versus organizations that show up, warm up, have the right gear, are ready to go. They're already in stride. So if we're at the bottom of the market, and it's been like that the last couple of years, and now we're starting to see an inflection point, which is great for everyone involved. Those organizations that spent money well, but also invested in building their brand and didn't cut off branding and didn't stop doing events and doing different social things, they're going to reap the rewards of inbound and the right types of conversations, because they stayed consistent. Versus you can see, even in someone's social presence, like, posted last 12 months ago or 8 months ago. It's like, what happened, right? And so, to your point, absolutely understand, maybe we need to manage the P&L differently, or we need to make sure that we don't, go out of business. But it can't completely be zero, right? We can not stop talking about what we're doing, because when there is interest, there's not going to be anything about who we are. There's going to be no, proof point or anything about how to reference us. So I think the best companies we've engaged with, just consistent.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I feel like there's always something that you can do in marketing. And if you have budget, then you can do a lot of cool things. But if you don't have the budget, you can still do things. Like, I'm always like, when was the last time you did an actual SEO audit or a content audit, or like look to see how your customers are engaging with the content, or checking in to make sure that content is in your brand voice and style, and that your sales collateral is in that same brand voice and style. Like, all of that work can be done just with your internal employees or with your third party vendor or whatever you're working. And so I do. And then when the companies that are like, oh, it's go time, the market's turning. Okay, well, if all your collateral isn't in the same voice, you're not going to get what you want out of it. And so it's in those times that you should still be thinking through, how can we do this better so that we're ready when the time comes.
The thing that kills me is actually how people spend on marketing. I think people think marketing, to your point, is solely spending a bunch of money on SEO and then sending an army of people to really expensive conferences. And then those people are sometimes not the most commercial people, so they don't spend their time talking to customers to generate net new opportunities. And then they go, oh my gosh, we got to cut marketing. Like, I don't know, maybe don't spend $40,000 to send 10 non-salespeople to a conference where they should be talking to people trying to land business, right? How much you could do with that money that is actually more useful. And we found a lot of success with small, very focused, curated events that we run where we get executives there and there's no crazy spend, there's no crazy agenda, just get people in a room and talk. I'd rather do that than fly a bunch of people out to go to an event to maybe talk to people. I just think you can manage your capital a lot better, specifically from a spend perspective.
I agree. And I think a lot of times we make technological spend without really thinking through what we want it to do. And like, I know that's a lot that we see like on the marketing side. People are like, oh, well, we got this CRM, it has this marketing function, use it. And they're like, okay, but like, that is not what I would want out of the marketing automation tool. Like no one asked them. So I feel like we can be more strategic how we're spending money across the board in marketing, making sure that it's meeting the needs of what we want. Or like, okay, our trade show strategy, do we need to send the 10 people or do we need to send 3 people? Or do we, have a dinner that's over here and then we're not paying the cost for those other 7 people to go to conference, but they're at the dinner with the clients, like there's ways that we can do that more strategically to stretch the dollar. I agree.
Absolutely.
And you do, you really do talk about spending that time with your customers face to face with them. The world is very digital, but face-to-face conversation still matters a lot. So why do you talk about that so strongly?
I've seen deal cycle accelerate and trust just accelerate with face-to-face. It's just easier to read a person and also understand, is this opportunity viable? And know, in sales to me, a no early on as almost more important than pushing through a yes that may not be the right fit. And those things are typically easier to decipher in a face-to-face. And then long-term, it's relationship development. So we see 2 or so customers face-to-face every week. We're in Chicago. It's the Mecca for freight. Sorry, Chattanooga, we still love you, but you are number 2. And it helps us just to get buy-in. Almost every time we sit down face-to-face with a client, something new comes up. Hey, we're working on this new role. Can we get your perspective on this from a consulting lens? Do you have a solution for XYZ? That stuff wouldn't pop up if we didn't go and see them. Obviously, again, there are constraints relative to where you may be, but if you're going to go get on a plane, a rule I've had for a long time, I'm going to go see multiple people to stretch that dollar. So I'm getting on a plane to go see Jennifer. I better find 4 or 5 other people that I can get a meeting with and really make the most of the time. And for us, that's like the North Star, because almost every time new opportunities show up just from sitting down, grabbing coffee, hanging out at their office every time.
I agree. And I would even say people's attention spans are part of this, because I find digitally, we are still doing 18 things at once. Whereas when you're face to face, it is way harder to not make eye contact and be in the moment and work with that person. Whereas even if you're on a call, you can still be checking your email over here, seeing what's on this screen. Just Google right now.
Totally. Yeah.
So I don't get distracted on a podcast interview. But like, I feel like that's part of the power of face-to-face. It is easier to brainstorm and have those conversations, but it kind of forces people to be like human and interact on a real level, where digitally you can be distracted way easier, I think.
Absolutely agree.
Yep. So you built Journey around helping professionals become better at what they do. You have coaching, the defined processes, which I love. What are some of the best lessons that you learned about developing people rather than just teaching them skills? Because that's 2 different things.
Absolutely. So the core services that we provide here, we have a recruiting side, a consulting side, and a training side. In each of those elements, we spend time with executives talking about how to build their business or how to structure their business. There's a lot of coaching. There's a lot of understanding how to break down certain walls that might make it hard for them to grow their business. And so, in our opinion, you have to show how things are done and then give people the opportunity to go and execute. And again, that's not just consulting work. That's not just training work. And it's not just recruiting. It's what is the best practice for how to execute this? What do we know about this? What experiences do we have? How do you show people how that's done? But then they have to go and do the work. So typically, that's a lot of where the friction is, right? Sometimes people will come to us and they just want us to give them the answers, right? Like that's not how you learn how this works. Glad to help understand how is it done today? What's the perspective? What's best practice? Let's build this together. Now I'm going to hand you the baton. You must go execute it. The best customers for us today across all of our services take that baton and run with it. And then they lean on us as, thought partners throughout the process to say, how can we reinvent this? How do we do this more effectively? I think the hardest part, sometimes people just want to do the work for others, and then you don't learn how to execute it yourself. So very big on let's model this together. And then we have to be a resource for you, but we can't just do the work. Like you have to go own it.
Mm-hmm. Just like being a parent. I feel like these are conversations I have with my 9-year-old. I can't just do everything for you, or you will not grow up to be a functional human. And that's my job.
That's absolutely true. 100%.
So, well, I'm excited to hear all your perspective on this, and I'm really excited for you to come and speak at the Marketing Accelerator. So even though we just talked about how important face-to-face is, there are still opportunities digitally. But the one thing I'm excited about this virtual accelerator is it's going to be hands-on. We're going to give you like step-by-step ways for people to engage and start like taking that advice, like you said, so that they're able to apply it and not just you giving them all the answers. So with that in mind, without giving away your entire session, but what's one idea or framework that you're hoping attendees will walk away thinking, I can put this into practice tomorrow morning?
I'll talk about individual personal branding, and I'll save some of the company marketing branding stuff for the session itself. But I'm very big on making sure that people leave a conversation or a session with some tangible items to go attack. So for me, it's the framework around how do you build your voice? So the first thing, what do you know implicitly well? Like cold, you could just grab a microphone and talk about it all day. I mentioned some of it earlier. Sales, I know brokerage well. I love football. I like to work out. A couple of other ancillary things. Okay, fantastic. We have those items. Okay. Are there some stories that are core to the way you understand how that works? It doesn't have to be perfect. Just write those things down. Okay, great. Which one of those do I feel strongest about that I could talk about as often as possible? Okay, let me take those and start to build content around them. And then there are fantastic tools to pre-schedule or hold yourself accountable to start to talk about these different things. And then we need to decide, you got to raise your hand and say, I'm willing to do this at this cadence. It doesn't need to be twice a day. It doesn't even have to be every day. You could say, I'm going to get started building my brand and I'm going to post Monday, Wednesday, Friday. That's it. Here's what I want to talk about. Here's how I know that. Here's the schedule that I'm going to stick to. I want people to walk away and go and do that if you want to build a personal brand, because once you start to find your voice and you write more and you hold yourself accountable to that schedule, then you can go and do it every day or multiple times a day if you want to. But you got to start somewhere. And that's literally, I still use this to this day. I have a large Google Drive folder with every post I've ever written. It just helps me understand how to rewrite and think about different things. But it started out just like that. What do I know? How do I find my voice? Let me write this stuff down. And like, what's the schedule that I feel comfortable adhering to?
I love that. Really great voice. Again, that will be Will Jenkins being our kickoff for the Marketing Virtual Accelerator. That's September 9th, 12 to 3 p.m. ET. Excited to have you there. It's going to be a great session. So pumped. So last question for you. This is something I ask everybody who comes on the show. If you could go back in time and advise your younger self anything, and this could be personally or professionally, when would you go back to and what would you say?
I would probably go back to pre-Coyote during my time, I guess, deciding what my next move was. I moved from Kimberly-Clark to Coyote, and that changed my career in a positive way. I wouldn't be here had I not had the opportunity to go and attack that. But what I would tell myself in that transition was, you're more capable than you may know, and there are more things that you can go and take on. So attack that with as much energy as you have, and really go and be the best version of yourself. Not that I wasn't, but the reason I said that is, 3 years after starting at Coyote, I was 23 when I started there. I turned 27 in April. That's when we started working on Molo. We launched Molo July 5th of 2017. There's not that much that was different about me at 25 than 26 and freshly 27. I could have taken more risks, could have gone to try more, could have learned more, right? Like all of the things are right there in front of me. So I would say, don't be afraid to take those risks, even at a younger age, because it is really just an element of understanding and learning as much as you can to go and perform. And, again, I would push myself to make a couple more risks a little bit younger.
I think that's great advice. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today. Excited for the virtual accelerator on September 9th. It's always great to hear from you. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Jennifer. I appreciate you.